Do what? Okay, you can check. I don't want any reactions though. You start crying, you need to leave. All right. Everybody was crying about these things.
He's not allowed to see our scores. Huh? He's not allowed to see our scores.
What? All right, this is taking time, so I've lost. Put your stuff away. Stop caring. So is Jackson good or bad?
Bad.
Raise your hand if you think Jackson was bad for our country.
He thought so.
Raise your hand if you think Jackson was positive for our country.
Can I vote half a hand though?
Raise your hand if you think he's a mixed bag. That's kind of what most historians have said. Some have said he's the worst ever, and a few think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. My wife thinks he's great, but she didn't know anything about it. Sorry, honey. So there's that. Let's talk about Van Buren. All right. Van Buren, as we talked about before, he was a machine politics guy. Not a lot great happened during Van Buren's presidency, which is probably the one reason why you can see the election of 1840 isn't far away. A couple times in AP, we're literally going to have one election followed by the next election because the president did so little that it will never be on the AP exam. Like we do election of 1880, election of 1884, election of 1888, all within like a 5-minute period. It's pretty awesome. Van Buren mostly just dealt with the crap that he had to get from Jackson. Mostly of it was economic, the economic fallout from the bank falling apart. There were some problems with Canada. So Van Buren's going to have to deal with some Canadian problems. Dun, dun, dun. The Canadians and there's some border skirmishes. We're getting close to my favorite Aroostook War, where the people from Maine take on the lumberjacks from Canada in a border war that I think is awesome. Because in my head they're running at each other with axes and chainsaws. Although it was in the 1880s, so probably not chainsaw. Let's talk about the Panic of 1837. As with the Panic of 1819, what tends to be always the reason why we have a panic? There is over-speculation in the market. Specifically, we learned about this because people put a lot of money, specifically the bus, in wildcat banks. So people were getting money from these wildcat banks and investing in land, right? But they couldn't pay back their land, and so the banks failed. Also, people were beginning to, and we're going to learn about this, maybe on Monday. Transportation is starting to become a big issue, like roads out west. As the population moves west, right? Here's our trains map. This is more 1860s to 1890s, but you can see that Americans are going to start wanting to have transportation. As more population begins to move west, we want to be able to trade, right? Cities want to trade with other cities, right? Chicago's becoming a bigger city. Buffalo's becoming a bigger city. Detroit's becoming a city, and so they want to have trade. And so things like canals, steamboats, all these things, railroads eventually are going to become expensive. People are going to borrow a lot of money to build these things. When they don't work out, the banks all fail. England was loaning us lots of money, and we couldn't pay back. The investors from England couldn't pay back their money. So in the end, these banks are all failing, and factories are closing, unemployment's going up. That's what happens during depressions. Because the banks fail, companies can't start or keep going. If companies can't start or keep going, what happens to jobs? They get cut. And if jobs get cut, people stop buying stuff, right? And people stop buying stuff, and people stop making stuff, and more jobs are lost. So it's all cyclical. So that's the Panic of 1837. What is Van Buren's reaction to this? Since the bus is gone by 1836, it's going to be the independent treasury system. All right, the independent treasury system.
Which was Van Buren's reaction.
Yeah, this is since we don't have a bus anymore to put the money, where are we we going to put it? The Treasury Bill of 1840 set up something called the Independent Treasury System. It was called kind of like the divorce. You see that's the divorce bill in there? He said one of the problems was, and here's the bus, right? Treasury money was going into the bus. And what could they do with some of that Treasury money? What was the bus doing with some of that Treasury money? Loaning it out, right? Van Buren and the Democrats thought, because they didn't like the bus, this is a horrible idea. They wanted an independent treasury system, essentially where all the money would go into this treasury and the money would sit there and just be used by the government, but it could not be loaned out. The money was safe, but it couldn't go up. It was locked up. And it would be locked up in several cities, but the money was not for anyone to get a hold of in terms of borrowing. Before this, the federal government could make money. If you put money in a bank, and the bank makes money, who makes money? The government does, right? Depositors, investors. Does anyone have a savings account in here? You give the bank money, right? And what's that bank do with your money? Well, what are they doing with your money? They're loaning it to other people. And what are they giving you for the right to take your money loaned out? A little bit of interest. So the government was gaining interest because the bus was loaning out its money. Now the government is not getting this, but the money is more secure. Because they are divorcing the government from the banking system, right? That's what's called the divorce bill. This will go away when the Whigs come up and then come back again when the Democrats win again. And then we get to the election of 1840. In the election of 1840, and after this we'll panic for a second and get to the economy. In the election of 1840, it's the same candidates as in 1836. Who are the Democrats? What's the Democrat? Van Buren, right? MBB. And this is the Democrat. And the Whig is William Henry Harrison. His campaign slogan, Tippecanoe and Tyler too, because his vice president was a guy named John Tyler. John Tyler was actually a Democrat who ran as the Whig vice president. But what happens to William Henry Harrison in a month after this? He dies. So then a Whig won the presidency and died, and a Democrat ended up becoming president. Why would you, if you're William Henry Harrison, get a Democrat to be your vice presidential candidate? Yeah, it helps draw votes in, right? But then it kind of backfired when William Henry Harrison died, and Tyler comes in and hates everybody in William Henry Harrison's cabinet. He got pneumonia. He gave a 4-hour inaugural address in the rain. It was cold, and he got pneumonia and died a month later. So he was only president for about a month. Shortest serving president. Also, by the way, during this was the Liberty Party. The Liberty Party is important. First of all, what do we call parties that are not the main two?
Third party.
Third party. This is another third party. We've talked about the Anti-Masonic Party. The Liberty Party was against the spread of slavery. They were against the spread of slavery. Mass turnout. Whigs win. First Whig victory. Van Buren goes down. Tippecanoe and Tyler too. They tried to make, the Whigs tried to make Harrison look like a poor farmer who grew up poor to like get in touch with average Democrats, but they lied. He wasn't a poor farmer. He didn't grow up like that. But it makes him seem more attractive to everybody else, right? Like if I ever run for president, it would make my past seem way more like cool than it really was. Grew up in a middle-class house in Indiana. That's not radical, right? Like I want to have a story like how I saved millions from a burning fire, and I resuscitated all of them, and then all of them decided to, change their lives, and the next day I saved a bunch of babies and stuff. That's what I want to say. Okay, stop that, and